Okay, so after extensive PTR testing, we have an updated tier list. There have been several rounds of notes since the last time I made this list, but before we dive into it, there are a few things I must clarify. Number one, there is a misconception that if your spec is rated low, if your spec is in the soup tier, you can't play it. This is incorrect. Every single spec in World of Warcraft is at least balanced enough that you can bring it to a plus 12 or even a plus 15. Tier lists are made from content creators' perspectives of what will be the high key meta. Currently in this season, we're talking about pushing toward the title range. The problem with that mentality is that a lot of people just want to do that mid-range of keys. You don't necessarily stop at plus 12, but have to get to plus 20. There's a whole group of players, myself included, who exist in between that range, who don't quite get title, but still want to push higher than 12. The meta perception affects that community of players disproportionate to the people just at the top. Because if you're pushing that plus 20 key, you have a friends list that you can log on, go to BNet and say, hey, I'm a Fury Warrior, but can I still join your key? And you might get invited. This list is about the public perception of what these specs are going to be. Now, I have been testing PTR nonstop. I have a pretty good understanding of where a lot of these specs land. The last time we did this, I had a few things in needs more testing. There is nothing in needs more testing at this point. There will be another round of tuning notes, and if things get truly shaken up, I have no problem updating this list once again. But if you're watching this video, I do need you to know that every single spec will be viable in M+. You can play even the specs that are down below, you can play it. The hard part is going to be finding groups, because people will want you to be the S tier spec or even the A tier spec. But you can ask people who are even in the A tier and they might have a hard time finding keys. Keys have become incredibly competitive, which for better or worse is the reality of the situation of M+ nowadays. So if you're watching this, you're in that competition because you're curious. You want to know what's going to be meta. There is a meta. There is going to be some specs that simply do more damage than other specs. There is going to be more specs that can do more for your group than other specs, but it doesn't mean the things that are on the bottom of this list can't be played. And I think that's so important to clarify, because when we make these lists, if we don't clarify that, it's easy to say, oh man, Blood DK is my favorite tank. Oh, I love playing Blood DK, and I just wish I could play it. And I go, yeah, that's tough. I feel that. I also want to play Blood DK is super fun. I'm like, what key level do you want to do? And they're like, I can't play Blood DK. I just want to get to my plus 10s. I just want, I'm just on Portal. I just want to get my portals, and I'll have to re-roll off Blood DK. And I'm like, wait a second, hold up. No, wait, actually, Blood DK is a fantastic tank for that. And so that's the mentality that we have to clarify when we're talking about a list like this. What's your goal in the season? Because for plus 10s and plus 12s, you should play whatever you're the most comfortable with. That is going to be the spec you actually do the best on. If your goal is performance, the spec you have the most familiarity on is actually going to be the thing you do the best on. Now, that's my intro. Now that we've contextualized the key, we've contextualized the video, we can update this list, okay? All that in mind, let us begin. This is the old list. This is before tuning. It has since changed. Needs more testing. No longer. All right? Unholy DK is good. This spec is quite good. Recently, this has been buffed again, and then hotfixed. It is still maybe subpar to Frost. Frost was in the last set of notes, nerfed by 12% overall, and breath was changed ever so slightly. Unholy is top of A tier. I still think that Frost DK is better than Unholy. So Unholy is going to be landing firmly in the A tier. A very, very solid alternative. If you like Unholy, absolutely playable. There is a world where this gets one more look at, and it is back to S+. But given that it was S+ last season, I think that Frost has this time to shine this season. A DK still brings everything that a DK brings. And I'm going to try very hard not to make this video 2 hours, so we're just going to go over the changes to this list. Some of it is consistent, but quite a bit has been shaken up. Outlaw Rogue no longer needs more testing. It is firmly in the C tier. Outlaw Rogue has a few problems with it. It is still target capped. It needs to be fairly overtuned in order for it to be doing competitive damage. It is a member of the physical comp, which was indirectly nerfed when they took off the Mystic Touch. They reverted that from 8% to 5%, which indirectly and disproportionately affects Outlaw Rogue, since Outlaw Rogue is the only rogue spec with proper physical damage. Subtlety and Assassination do not have pure physical damage. They're actually mostly magic damage. Nature, Shadow. So, Outlaw was indirectly affected by this, but also Outlaw has target capped. Basically, if its consistent damage is so high that you want to bring it to a key where you pull pack by pack small targets, it could fit very well into that comp, and notoriously has fit very well into a sort of Brewmaster, Fury Warrior, Fizz comp with smaller pulls. It still has that niche. They recently buffed it, but also nerfed Blade Fury. But the thing is, if they nerf Blade Fury, that is so much of your damage that it was a very, very, very small buff, and I don't think the numbers are quite there for Outlaw. It is possible, because this spec is actually quite difficult to play, very fast-paced, very high APM, that the Outlaw Rogues that I have seen were not that competitive. It's possible, but the one thing that Outlaw Rogue should be able to do is shine regardless of the pulls. Regardless of the pulls that you're doing, this spec should shine. And every single time I've played with one, they are quite a bit behind other specs. So given all of that information, I cannot put them above C tier. That being said, we go over to the next rogue spec. This spec got giga buffed. All rogue specs have been buffed since the last time of this video, but Assassination in particular was buffed quite a bit. And it was buffed in a way that behooves them. Behoove is a word, if you didn't know that. It means benefits them. So Assassination in particular, very nice changes. They got a massive aura buff, so everything of their damage got buffed. And then, on top of the last notes, their single target priority damage got buffed, with Crimson Tempest getting nerfed by 9%. That being said, Assassination, I do not think, based on the numbers that I saw today from Assassination Rogue testing, I cannot put it in the S+ tier, but I can put it in high A. I think that Assassination is now the premier rogue spec. I think of all the rogue specs, Assassination is actually doing quite well. It still has its niche of being a very good funnel DPS. Okay? After I'm done talking about rogues, I want to take a little bit of a break to talk about why funnel DPS is important and what that actually means, because Assassination is quite good at this. Their single target is still not the highest, but has been buffed to a reasonable level. I think if you want to play Rogue, Rogue is a spec that both benefits and also gets unfortunately negatively impacted by the fact that they're a pure DPSer. They have 3 DPS specializations. Normally, not all 3 are good. You have to play one over the other. There's normally one up here, one over here, and one down like this. Unless you're a mage, in which case normally all 3 are actually fine to play. But in this particular instance, Rogue, Assassination, I think if you're a Rogue player, you're looking to play Assassination this season. I think Assassination is actually very decent. Its overall is competitive. Keep in mind, there is no offensive group buff, but you do still provide all the things that Rogue provides to your team. So Assassination lands firmly in the A tier. Again, I will not make this video 2 hours long, so we are going to move along. Subtlety Rogue. Yeah, this is the right spot for Subtlety Rogue. What's funny is that all the rogues got buffed, and Subtlety got buffed the least. I don't know how this happened. I really don't know how this happened. Subtlety was the one that needed it the most, and actually Subtlety got buffed the least. Like, actually, it got buffed the least. So, Subtlety, of all the rogue specs, is still down here. It does not have a damage profile that is unique compared to these two. Both of these are better damage profile than Subtlety. Subtlety's numbers are weaker. It's not tuned as high, so there's really no reason to play it. It doesn't bring anything compared to Outlaw or Assassination. In that context, it is literally soup. Like, there's A spec that has other options to play, and the fact that basically it's like, why would you bring this? You're actually trolling. Like, you're just basically bored on a rogue spec and you're like, I want to try subtlety today. You are literally going to do worse. Could you still time the key? Sure, but you are bringing less value to your group by playing subtlety. Therefore, subtlety stays in the soup tier. It's not that good. Okay, moving on. Right away, I want to talk, because we're going to mention it a lot. So many of the meta decisions in this key, in this season, now that people understand the game more and more over time, is about funnel priority damage. I need to explain what this is because I feel like a lot of WoW players do not understand what funnel priority damage means, okay? There are two different versions of this, but the best way to understand it is that I want you to think about your spec. Almost every spec in the game has a resource that you need to build. Could be anything. Could be a Warlock Soul Shards. It could be your energy. It could be your rage. It could be your this. It could be anything. You have a resource that you're going to spend on damaging abilities. Most specs in the game generate more of that resource when there are more targets in a pull. So if you have 5 targets and you can dot all 5 targets, you will be generating more of the resource that allows you to do damage, right? This is a simplified way because it's not quite perfect, but this is let me just give you an overview. So if I pull one mob that needs to die, or let's say a boss, but I can pull 4 more targets on top of this, then all of a sudden we get a situation where you can build more resources and then dump all that damage not into AoE, but into single target abilities. A classic example is a balanced druid who, instead of Starfalling, would cast Star Surge. Now, unfortunately, ethical balanced druids don't really exist in M+. So in the situation I'm describing, they're probably still casting Starfall. But the point exists that there are some specs in the game that have more resource generation that they can put into a single target spender comparatively to an AoE spender. So that's what funnel damage is. The reason this is so important is that most of the time in M+, your speed in the key is determined by the one big thing dying, not the small little things. If you think about the first pull of Priory, the guard captain needs to die before you advance to the next part of the dungeon. So how fast he dies is more important than how fast all the little mobs around him die. Or if you think about the first pull of Floodgate, then how fast the big shredder mob dies is more important than how fast the little mobs die. Ideally, and one thing you see when you're watching the really high keys, you're like, how do they go so fast? Where did they save so much time? Whenever I do that key, we always time with like 10 seconds left. How are they doing this? Look at the pulls. They've allocated damage to the point where that big guy dies at the same time as all the little ones. In your dungeon, because people are zug-zugging AoE, then that big guy is 40% health when the other little ones die. So that's a good example of why there are some DPS specializations that are rated higher. As per what we just talked about, Assassination Rogue does most of their damage to that main target and then cleaves off of it. Whereas a Resto Druid, a Balanced Druid or a Ret Pally, if you just hit Divine Storm, if you just hit Divine Storm, you're hitting all the mobs, but not quite the one in the middle that needs to die first. So there are some DPS profiles for keys that are more valuable than others. And that is the example of why some of these specs are going to be ranked higher. Overall damage might not be that far off. Although in general, because of tuning, the spec that tends to be higher up, even if their damage profile is better, also tends to do more overall damage. Okay, so moving on. Let's go bottom up. Do these specs still deserve to be in soup? Yes. Augmentation still deserves to be in soup tier. They have actually technically buffed this slightly, but not enough. It is still not buffing the tanks or the healers. The changes they made to this, it had its time. It was golden for so many seasons. I am okay with this. Are you okay with this? Is everyone okay with the fact that augmentation is considered soup? It's going to do less damage than other DPS. Could you play it? Sure. Are you losing damage and making the run slightly harder? Yes. That's okay. Everybody's okay with that. I don't think anybody in the WoW community is upset about the fact that augmentation is not going to be very well represented in a meta strategy. Nobody wants that. We're all good with it. It had its time. It was actually really fun to play. I played it. I'll out myself. I played it. I really enjoyed playing it in keys. It's fine. It's here for now. Maybe they'll buff it again in the future. I don't know, but it's okay for now. Holy Priest. Does this spec still deserve to be in soup? Yes, it does. Here's why. They have not buffed it that much. They buffed it ever so slightly, but Disc has gotten all the attention. The problem is these are both priests. They both provide the same things, except that this one does literally everything better. Disc Priest does everything that Holy Priest does, but better. If you want to do more damage, you can play Voidweaver. Voidweaver does incredible amounts of damage as a Disc Priest, okay? Everything that Holy Priest wants to do. As a Holy Priest, you're like, I do more DPS than Oracle. Yeah, but Voidweaver does way more DPS than you. And you're like, okay, well, I can do more spot healing. It's like, Oracle does better spot healing than you. It's just, I actually think that the Halo, like Archon Holy Priest with Halos is like so cool, man. It actually looks visually very fun. And I have played it once or twice. The truth is, aside from GS being a really cool button for your tanks, you got Paints Up, you got everything. This still deserves to be here. It hasn't been buffed enough. The problem is that this is decent in raid, so it's not going to get buffed for keys. You have to accept the fact that if you're a priest player, realistically speaking, the Disc Priest is going to outshine you in every circumstance. You probably have to accept the fact that you just can't. Like, Holy Priest is not going to be represented unless they bring that tuning completely sideways, which they have done before and has happened, where Disc Priest simply cannot have the output, doesn't do the HPS, doesn't do the damage, and Holy Priest is actually just significantly better by a margin in every way. That has happened, but right now is tipped in Disc Priest's favor, so that still deserves to be here. Blood DK. All right. The spec has been buffed since I last rated it here. I've also played a lot of it. I found myself significantly enjoying the Deathbringer playstyle of Blood DK. I don't believe that this belongs in soup tier anymore. I actually don't. It is doing relatively competitive DPS. If you discount group buffs, which you can't, but if you did, this spec is really solid. It's performing better than I thought it was originally. Part of it is the dungeon pools that we originally tested versus the ones that are now available. But I actually think that Blood DK is doing a little bit better. I cannot rate it higher, but it does deserve to at least move up to C tier. There are two tanks that I'll go over right now. But basically, there are two tanks that belong in the C tier at the moment. One of them is Blood DK, but it's not soup. Actually, you can make an argument, the next tank I'll talk about, both of these are give or take similar in similar spots right now. Blood DK felt fluid. I was genuinely immortal in the 12 to 15 keys that I was doing. I was actually immortal. If I could live the gather and I could get into the pack correctly, I mean, I had one pack where my group wiped and I just stood there and I was like, you guys think I could solo this for the next 10 minutes? I didn't kill it, but I was just there forever, and I was like, no problem. So Blood DK, very self-sufficient. The one caveat I want to say for Blood DK, if you can play it well, this might be one of the best tanks for a plus 12. I really do believe that, because on a plus 12, you don't rely on your healer external to gather. The main downside of Blood DK is how many globals it takes for you to set up, and aggro can be a very tough situation for Blood DK. In that key environment of a plus 12, your DPS do this thing where they see a bunch of red nameplates in a pack, and they immediately full send cooldowns when you are running through the pack attempting to grab more mobs. In a plus 12, what happens is the DPS go zug zug. Their reptilian brain activates, and they say, I must do damage now. If I wait 0.5 more seconds, I will internally combust. And therefore, I must do damage now. This is a problem for Blood DK. Blood DK has relatively weak snap threat. It needs several globals to set up. And as a tank like that in lower keys, it's probably one of the things that you have to be worried about. I actually think that's maybe one of Blood DK's like significant problems, because you don't have a bomb limb anymore. Like, if you had a bomb limb, it actually solves that problem very well because you pull everything toward you. Without a bomb limb, though, you actually have to really consider that. I mean that, too. It's like a problem with Blood DK. When I was playing it today, I was like, oh, please wait. And I was like, I'm going to grab 2 packs. I was like, please wait. I was just fine. I was like, please wait. Like, yeah, it's just tough. A little bit of a tough situation. But damage actually very solid. It doesn't have an offensive group buff, so it can't compete with other tanks. It can't be in the A tier just because I'm kind of glazing it a little bit, but it actually feels really good to play. So genuinely solid tank. I think that everything is good here. It just, because of the lack of utility, there are so many packs where I was like, I wish I was a prop pally. I wish I was a warrior. I wish I was a VDH. I wish, there were a lot of times I thought that. So aside from being Blood DK though, pretty solid. Bear tank, same situation, to be honest. Bear tank is actually pretty decent. The best thing, so this is the exact opposite. This is the exact opposite of Blood DK's problem. One of the reasons that bear tank is so good for lower keys is because its snap threat is fantastic. It is near impossible to lose aggro as a bear tank. Your DPS would have to genuinely zug. Bear tank has a unique thing where you just thrash as you walk into a pull. As you're walking into the pull, as long as you have thrash ticking, then you will not lose aggro. But one giant tip, can you stop swiping? Stop swiping. Don't swipe when you walk into a pull. Bad idea. That's how you lose threat as a bear tank. But as long as you set up, you don't need many globals. You need to walk through. You need to thrash, mangle, ironfur. Done. Threat's good. And so snap threat on bear is actually very, very good. Thrash is not target capped. As long as you get thrash ticking with a single iron, you're done. Snap threat's great. Aggro is a big problem. It's a thing to talk about. It should absolutely affect a tier list ranking. If this is meant to help you understand what tank should I bring to my plus 12, it's like bear will not struggle with threat nearly as much as a Blood DK would, for example. If they're playing well, this is obviously if they're playing well, because you can play one of the best tanks poorly and you will still die and struggle with threat. The issue with bear's pretty tanky. It's pretty tanky. I can't say I feel immortal, but it's pretty tanky. Like, it's very, very solid. I just can't rate it higher than C in good conscious. If anything, I would put both tanks. Like, if I have to separate the tanks by tier, I would put both tanks up here to B, like low B. But since I can't rate them that, these 2 tanks in particular have to be down below the other ones for very clear reasons, and I would be trolling if I tried to rate them elsewhere. So Guardian Druid, its damage is okay in AoE. Its single target is still low, but the biggest thing is you ask yourself, why am I bringing a Druid? It's not the most immortal. It's not the tankiest tank. It's just a very straightforward, easy tank to play. I love it, but I can't say that it is actually the most immortal. I might have an easier time living on other tanks right now. That used to be Bear's niche. Bear's niche was, look, I do a big bear pull in Karn. I'm golden. That's not actually a thing anymore. Like, you can do a giant first pull of Gambit on 15 as a bear, and you're like, in Karn. Or you could do it as a prot warrior and do the same thing, except be even more immortal. So, and have more to your group, because you can actually help your group a lot more. So, bear is in a little bit of a weird situation where I do think that bear has to stay in C tier. I can't rate it higher, but I do want to clarify that of all the rankings, the tanks should be ranked differently than DPS, because these are both pretty solid right now. Like, you won't have a problem playing them. It's just that you can do more for your group with other tanks. These have to stay here. Their damage is not higher. Their survivability, this one actually is immortal once you get set up, but this one, the Guardian Druid, it needs a little bit more. They buffed it in the last set of notes, and the problem is that 100% buff of nothing is still nothing. So they could buff that by 1,000%, and maybe we'd have a different conversation. Guardian Druid has to stay here, okay? Fury Warrior. Now, this one did get buffed, and it was buffed in a way that actually mattered. We're just going to go straight up through this list here. So the next spec on the list, we're going to go like boop, 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 and reevaluate. A Fury Warrior. I move this to B tier. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way. There's no way. Fury Warrior gives the warrior buff. The caveat to this is that I am including the buff in this. Raw damage numbers alone, I don't know if it quite deserves to be out of C tier. But by buff, by extension, by proxy of Battle Shout, you might want to play a Fury Warrior in your comp. There are some meta comps developing. If you need a warrior buff, I would argue, and this is, I know, hear me out, I think that Fury Warrior is ever so slightly better than Arms Warrior. I actually think that if I was going to pick one of these, the recent buffs to Fury, it's a little bit context dependent, because if you're pulling mass AoE packs all the time, Fury still feels really bad. But a lot of these dungeons, Dawnbreaker doesn't have that crazy mass AoE. There's a lot of dungeons, Streets of Tazavesh. There's a lot of things where Fury actually feels like it's a little bit more competitive. The 10% buff to cleave is actually a fairly big buff, and Mountain Thane Thunderblast is popping off. I did a key earlier today where I was testing one of the next specs we're going to talk about, and I had a Fury Warrior, and he was technically top damage if you factor in Battle Shout. If you don't factor in Battle Shout, then I beat him. I was totally top damage. But if you factor in Battle Shout, he actually beat me by about 200k. So that was a Priory we did earlier. And he was competitive. He was keeping up. Even on mass AoE, he was doing okay. And on bosses and on regular cleave, pretty solid. Fury, the main thing about it is that they have damage relatively consistently, but it used to be better for them when they were a true 45-second spec. They are indeed kind of a minute and a half. Now they got the minor 45 with recklessness, etc. I tested Fury Warrior today. I gotta say, I didn't play it that well. I didn't do that well with it. Based on my testing alone, I was like, this spec is soup. But actually, I genuinely think that it has play. If you want a warrior in your comp, I think it has play. So don't trust my testing of Fury Warrior, but I actually had the opportunity to play with other Fury Warriors who are much better than I, and I got to see what they would do in a dungeon like Priory or like Floodgate, which has mass AoE, and they were doing okay. It was actually okay to play a Fury Warrior. Okay, moving on. Affliction. You're going to notice a trend here. Affliction, way up, B tier. Can't rank it higher than this because it is still Affliction. It still suffers from the sins of its ancestors, which is that it's Affliction. It does not have a second charge of Vile Taint, and it does not have a lower cooldown on Vile Taint. There are a few fundamental issues with this spec, but its damage is significant now. You just do damage. Like, you actually just do damage. Hard to play, hard to set up, difficult to play around, not always the friendliest spec, technically doesn't have a group buff, etc., but actually good. Like, genuinely, you play the spec well, you will do damage. You will actually be on the meters. Like, you are not that far behind. The main reason Affliction was way down here before was like, man, you're doing all this work for what? What's the point? What's the point? You're doing all this work to play Affliction, and for what? You're just not doing a lot of damage. Now you are. That the last few buffs were significant to Affliction. So you're actually doing damage now. Still has all the fundamental issues that Affliction does, but much better now. Okay, moving on. Holy Paladin. This spec got buffed a fair bit on the last reset. 12%, 12%, 12% to a lot of its major abilities. I think it deserves its spot in C tier. I don't think it goes any higher than this. I know. I've played with a few Holy Paladins thus far. I haven't played with dozens. I've played with 3 since the buffs. 2 since the buffs and 3 in general that I would consider in the last few days. Here, listen. It struggles with output. It just, we were dying. And I was like, oh man, with respect, if this wasn't a Holy Paladin, I think we would have lived that. Like, I think we would have been okay. It just has some fundamental issues with the fact that it doesn't have very consistent healing. And in order to game this spec, which you can, you got to do a weird amount of min-maxing for a melee wings paladin. Like, you should be able to just hit a few buttons, okay? Like, you could just hit a few buttons, but actually, it's not enough. Like, you will, like, let me give you an example. Because on one hand, if you're a Holy Paladin, you're thinking right now, you're like, oh, I can make it work. You walk into the first pull of Priory on a 15. You're pulling the Knight plus the Guard Captain, etc. Now, granted, you have a lot of utility there. You can bop the bleed off the first person. You can double freedom. Or actually, a Holy Paladin can. But you can freedom one person who's squishy, so they don't die to a pot shot. But there's a lot of HPS required in that dungeon. You think you can do it? You pull 5 Paladins as a Holy Paladin. How long can you keep that alive? Like, reasonably speaking, how much HPS can you actually do? It's like, well, if I play perfect and then I time my aura mastery and then I sack and then I this and then I make sure I do that and I just make, it's like, you're doing a lot of work for a subpar result, because in that pull, your damage is not excellent. Your HPS is struggling, if that. A cast goes off, you just don't have a lot to game. I think that the output of Holy Paladin keeps it here, even with the buffs. I do not think that it is that great right now. Like, I don't think you're ever going to say, I wish I had a Holy Paladin in this key. I think you will oftentimes say, I wish I had a not Holy Paladin in this key, and therefore it deserves a spot in C tier. But it is playable, and the buffs were nice. I just still think its output is not quite there. Obviously, the best healer in the world could game this and make it work, but I also think they would have an easier time making any of the other, like most of the other healers work. Okay, Ret Pally, this one, big changes to Ret Pally, massive buffs, and also bug fixes. The original Ret Pally version had Empyrean Hammer being completely bugged. It is now not bugged. It also got significant buffs. I played this spec earlier. I was top damage. And what I did when I played Ret Pally is, here, let me explain this first, okay? Ret Pally actually is in a pretty good spot. I moved this to A. There's a few reasons why I move it to A. It is actually doing decent damage. It's got good overalls. There's a very real world where you're competing for top overall. I move this to A tier, but most importantly, you have very, very good utility for a lot of these dungeons. There are bleeds that get applied to DPS players, not just the tank. You can't do this in, for example, the Halls of Atonement, but you can do it in Arakara First Area, which is very dangerous. Arakara First Area, you will love to have a Ret Pally. Here's why, okay? You have a bop for whoever needs that bop. You have a sacrifice, which is a 12-second poison immune when you spec into Righteous Protection. You have double freedom for things like the first pull of Priory and the Guard Captain. You also have good damage yourself. You also have poison cleanse. You also have a lay on hands. You actually have a lot of things you can do for the group as a Ret Pally. You're also providing a Devo aura. If Holy Pally is down here, and we'll rank Pro in a second when we get there, then Ret Pally actually has a lot of uses. This dungeon pool in particular, Arakara is like such a good dungeon for Ret Pally. You have very consistent damage if you are playing. You're playing pretty consistent wings, right? So every 30 seconds, you got a nice burst of damage. Every minute, you have good cooldowns. You've got all the bases covered for being a good M+ spec. You've got several defensives that you can cycle through. You have Bubble, which is an immunity. As long as your numbers are good, Ret Pally should be considered a very viable DPS spec. The only reason it was in C tier before was because it was doing 3 million DPS less than the other specializations. But that's not true anymore. The delta between the Ret Pally and this DPS is actually a lot closer. I don't know if it'll be top damage, but it doesn't need to be top to be top damage. It just needs to be very good because it has all these other things. Ret Pally is one of the only DPS that can actually save a team member and make a significant contribution to your team. Other DPS are very zug-zug, and you can play Ret Pally like that. The main criticism of Ret Pally is that the best way to play Ret Pally is to unhinge your jaw and just roll your face along your keyboard. And the best Ret Pally players, according to some, are going to be the ones who have the most unhinged jaw to cover more surface area so they can hit more keys as they face roll on their keyboard. This is relatively true, but there's nothing wrong with the spec being simple and easy to play. The best thing to understand is that if you really want to min-max the spec, there's actually a lot that you can do. Like, you have options to propel yourself from being a face-rolling keyboard spec into an actual highly skilled DPS, because you have these things that you're not actually a solo DPS player as a Ret Pally. You can play like that. You'll do fine. You actually have the ability to help your group, especially in a lot of these dungeons, knowing that there's a bleed. Like, first pull of Priory, you should be looking for who that first bleed is on. Bop them. Don't bop yourself because you're zug-zug and aggro. Bop the person who has the bleed. It helps a lot. Double freedom the person. Learn the mechanics, and you can actually really, get Ret Pally out of this mentality. So that's what I have to say about Ret Pally. Okay, you can actually make a pretty substantial difference on a Ret Paladin. All right, moving on. We went over Outlaw Rogue. We already put it up here. Arms Warrior. If anything, I would say this needs more testing. Actually, every DPS warrior I have seen since the buffs has been Fury. The numbers between Fury and Arms were relatively similar before. This got a bigger buff. I think that Fury is a little bit better. Obviously, in uncapped AoE, Arms is better. If anything, this would need more testing, but I'm pretty comfortable with its spot here. I don't think that I just don't think it has the numbers compared. Ultimately, which DPS warrior you play, both of them are fine. They're relatively similar gear sets. So ultimately, if Arms is better, you play Arms, and if Fury is better, you play Fury. They're pretty close to each other. They're not like that far, but if anything, my prediction would be this. This could be wrong. They could be swapped, but they're pretty close to each other. So I'm comfortable with this decision for now. I did not personally play Arms. I personally played Fury. I did not personally play Arms, so caveat this a little bit. Okay, Devastation Evoker. This spec has been buffed and changed since the last tuning round. I will put this in B tier. I will move it up 1, but no more than that. It does have good damage in AoE. Its single target is okay. The main thing about this spec is just like Ret Pally, a good Devastation Evoker has Zephyr, Rescue, and Cauterizing Flame. And Cauterizing Flame. I need to say that 5 times, but I will say it twice. This season of Dungeon Pool has some nasty bleeds. When I made this list, we hadn't tested Halls of Atonement yet. We have now, and let me tell you something about that dungeon. It sucks. It is hard. It is really hard to tank that dungeon. It will be really fun. Me and a bunch of other tanks that were having a great time walking in and dying had to learn how to tank it. It was very fun. The reason it's so hard to tank in response to Devastation Evoker is because there are really heavy bleeds. Those bleeds are staggered. You don't pull them back to back. The dog packs and Halls of Atonement are not back to back. They are specifically 1 to 2 minutes apart. So you can have Cauterizing Flame for every single dog pack. As a Devastation Evoker, you could literally save your tank in a pug every single time. This is super impactful because if you're talking about the very high keys, your tank has a plan. But if you're talking about the lower keys, or like let's say 10s or 12s throughout the season, your tank does not have a plan. Your tank is eating dirt. Your tank is dead, dude. Your tank is going to stand there and face tank the thing and not know why he died. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if those bleeds were nerfed. They were really quite difficult. They hurt a lot. You have a very unique ability as a Devastation Evoker to dispel the bleed. Now, you're noticing this is not me talking about its damage or anything. If that alone in Halls of Atonement, I'll put this in A tier because you can literally solo success the key by using that ability correctly. As well as the fact that there are intermittent curses in Dawnbreaker. They're not too often, but let's say you need that extra curse to spell Cauterizing Flame. There are bleeds in Dawnbreaker on your tank. Again, intermittent. You only need the 1 or 2 dispels. You have Cauterizing Flame. This is a very big button. If you're a Devastation Evoker, I implore you, learn the dungeons when to use this. Priories in the dungeon pool, many uses. Cauterizing Flame. If you know how to use that button, very helpful. Also, you have Rescue and Zephyr, which are both really good buttons. You can, again, make a difference for the survival of your team. You also do good damage. Your damage is actually decent. The main reason you're not above this is because you don't have an offensive group buff. If a Evoker gave 2% crit to your whole team, you would literally be high A tier. You would actually just like this. But unfortunately, the meta in M+ is heavily decided by group buffs, so I think the tuning on Dev is actually okay right now. It could be a little bit higher even, and then it would be like a little bit higher up, but it can't be S tier, it can't be A tier, but those are just niche uses. I would put this slightly higher. Like, I would rather have a Dev Evoker than a Fury Warrior or an Afflock. I think this fits into some comps really well, so I would put this like pretty high up in the B tier, if that makes sense. So if we're gonna rank it like this, it would be quite high up there. Okay, moving on. Windwalker, bro, I'm so sorry for you guys. Listen, Windwalkers, I know you exist, but Blizzard doesn't. So I just want to say I'm sorry, because every single patch notes, Brewmaster and Mistweaver have gotten something. You have been notoriously left out of literally every single notes. It's so strange. Blizzard completely forgot about you. I'm sorry for you guys. I'm not going to move you down to soup. You don't deserve that. You almost do though. You don't do competitive damage. Like, your overall is significantly lower. You, much like Fury Warrior, are target capped. The Mystic Touch was reverted. You still bring 5% fizz damage. Can you play it? Yes. If you play a purely physical comp and you want to play it, and yeah, the main thing is this spec is so fun. Like, whenever I play Windwalker, it's just a really fun spec. It's so fluid, the way your mastery works, and just, you don't hit the same button twice. It's very fluid. I quite like it, actually. So I think that the Windwalker is actually pretty tanky in keys as well. Like, you have a lot of buttons to press. You technically have a utility. You do have a Tiger's Lust, which can be used for a few different things this season. You have a Poison Dispel. You got some stuff, but I'm not gonna lie, man. It's just you're doing 2/3 the damage, 3/4 the damage. Like, your numbers are not there in keys. If they buff this spec enough, you can be competitive. Like, you do provide a group buff. And there's a world, no matter how good Brewmaster and Mistweaver are, by the way, they're hard specs and they're niche specs. Not many people play Brewmaster and not many people play Mistweaver. So you might want a monk buff. Like, keep in mind, Prot Warrior is looking pretty good. So comp dependent, you might want the monk buff. So you might play Windwalker, but you will probably not see them topping the meters. Okay? Like, it's just, you're not going to be, you have to accept the fact that you're there not as a support spec, but borderline as a support. You're there for your Mystic Touch. They are using you for your group buff. They are not using you for you. And that is something you'll have to accept, just kind of like Fury Warriors and Arms Warrior. So that's the state of Windwalker right now. Cool, we went over these. Frost Mage, buffed, 10%. Listen, guys. When I talk about the mage specs, what's important to realize is that all mage specs were performing slightly below average according to the last patch notes. I don't know if you agree with this. I don't agree with this. But according to the last patch notes, all mage specializations were performing slightly below average, which is the best joke I have heard in months. God damn. Really, Blizzard? I cannot believe they had the cojones to say that on a public forum when we have all been calling for Mage to get nerfed, not buffed. They were like, listen, we're going to take some power out of the tier sets. I was reading that and I was like, great, honestly. Like, you know what? Fantastic. I was like, that seems reasonable. I was reading the nerfs. I was like, great. The 12% from 20%. Sounds good. Arcane Harmony 1 to 2. I was like, that's actually a fairly good nerf to Arcane. I was like, solid. And then I was like, and in compensation, all damage buff by 3%. All damage buff by 10%. I was like, what? Why? How did Mage get that? How did Mage get away with this? We were just talking about Windwalker. Bro, Frost Mage is up here. Frost Mage is borderline. It's not S tier, but it's high A. It's really good right now. Frost Mage also has a unique thing, which is that it's a Frost Mage, and it casts Blizzard. It slows everything. There's actual kiting that tanks need to do in dungeons like Halls of Atonement. So Mage is very valuable. In fact, if I as a tank player was going to choose one specialization that I wanted to play with in Halls of Atonement, it's a Mage. A Frost Mage in particular. They're very niche. Back in Shadowlands, they were always very good, and we forget the fact that we relied on them to kite. Like, that was a thing that happened in Shadowlands. We oftentimes played with a Frost Mage, and I think we took it for granted that back in the day when we used to kite a lot more, we just had a Frost Mage in DOS and the other side, in Halls of Atonement, etc. So, Frost Mage, damage, competitive. I played with 2 different Frost Mages today. Both of them were competitive DPS. They were still slightly lower than the other very good specs, but Mage. They provide Arcane Intellect, they provide Lust, they provide, importantly, Decurse, because mandatory dispels are back. I don't know why they did that. Like, they didn't have to do that, by the way. The last season, one of the reasons the last season was so much fun is because there were no mandatory dispel profiles. In the last dungeon pool, there was no mandatory dispel profile, which is much better for keys, but okay. So there are some curses that you want to worry about in these dungeons. Halls of Atonement in particular, and Dawnbreaker. Mage, great. So you have Frost Mage. Frost Mage is like, It's not like super high A tier because I can't say it's the highest DPS specialization, but it was doing good dam. In AoE, it was doing good dam. In single target, it was doing great damage. So it's a solid spec now. The 10% buff was very nice. So, okay, Frost Mage is good. Has all the utility that Frost Mage has. Let's move on. We went over here. Feral Druid got one buff in the last several patch notes. I have not seen many ferals. If anything, I would put this in needs more testing, but I'm pretty comfortable keeping it pretty much exactly where it is. The main benefit of feral, actually, they got their Saber Jaws buffed, which is more ferocious bite damage, which is more technical prio damage because of Apex Predator carving. I forgot the name of that for some reason. The old Shadowlands legendary, 4% chance to get a free ferocious bite on rip damage. So they got some more technical single targets, some more technical prio damage. It's not the largest buff, and that technically translates to larger cleave if you play Rampant Ferocity, etc., etc., etc. Guys, at this point, I'm just flexing about the fact that I've played Feral before and I know the names of the talent trees, okay? Let's be honest. But that being said, Feral Druid, it's decent, but its damage is still not quite there. I've played with one that actually did competitive DPS, but he was also one of the best Feral Druids in the world. So when you probably have an average Feral Druid, I think their damage is not like crazy competitive. One of the best things that Feral has going for it is the fact that A, Druid and Decurse, Mark of the Wild, but B, there's another Druid spec, which was just nerfed. And maybe you need a Druid buff. So there's a world where, especially in a physical comp, you need that Druid buff. Feral starts to look really good. A unique thing about Feral is pretty much all of its damage is physical, so that Mystic Touch starts to get really good for Feral. So I think it's I think it's B tier. It's not quite A tier. All right, moving on. Destro Lock, buffed. Crazy buff. I have not seen a single Destro Lock since the buffs, unfortunately. I do not know if the numbers on this bring it to A tier or B tier, okay? So here we go. This is mid-update, by the way. We're updating it live. The end of this is where we get the final tier list. This is mid-update right now, just so we're clear. Okay. The Destro Lock. I do not know if this quite does enough damage to go to A tier because I have not played with a single one since the buffs. Every Warlock I saw today was Affliction or Demo. Affliction, big damn. Okay. Destro got all the same buffs, except that I believe in my heart of hearts that if I had to guess, but I will say this is a guess, I think it's A tier. The Warlock buffs were massive. I mean, they were cataclysmic, which is a funny reference if you play Destro Lock. I think it's low A tier. I wouldn't be surprised if I move this to low A tier, to be honest. I think it's pretty solid, but I need to check. Again, Warlock, 3 DPS specializations, lives or dies by its tuning. If it does big damn, it does big damn. If it doesn't do big damn, it does not provide a group buff. It does not provide technical, the most utility out of any spec. It is not considered very good. So it lives or dies by its tuning. I think that Aff and Destro ultimately probably do similar amounts of damage. The best thing to understand is that this is more friendly in keys because the way that Aff does damage kind of still lands it in a solid B tier. I would even be comfortable. Oh, by the way, Aff should not be below Fury. Aff should be like very high B. It does good damage, but you have to play it well. And it's ramp timings, Vile Taint timings, etc., etc. The way that this works, the damage is not crazy funnel, crazy prio. It's just kind of pad, but does good damage. Destro here, same deal. Doesn't do a ton of prio damage. You're not going to be sending Chaos Bolts. You're going to be sending Rain of Fire in AoE. But it's ultimately pretty good. I think that low A or high B. This would be my ranking for Destro Lock. Okay, moving on. We've done these. Mistweaver. I'm going to keep Mistweaver where it is. I still think that if I was going to pick a melee healer, I would want Mistweaver over Holy Paladin for all the reasons I already mentioned about Holy Paladin. So Mistweaver here, solid spec, good-ish healing. Fistweaving build does good damn, but damage is technically comparable to everything else. So if you want Mystic Touch, good. Still has all the problems of Mistweaver, which is that doesn't provide DR, doesn't really help your group survive that much. Is good at healing, but not the best at healing. Is good at damage, but not the best at damage and still is just, it's got some cool things, but so do other healers. There's no real reason to bring it unless you want Mystic Touch. Mystic Touch is the only reason to bring Mistweaver. Yeah, that's actually like the reason to bring it. If you don't need Mystic Touch, you don't bring a Mistweaver. It's unfortunately just shafted into that responsibility and that role of just, if you don't need it, you don't need it. And that's the problem with this. Like, there's nothing it brings that another healer couldn't do a little bit better aside from its group buff. So that's the main thing about Mistweaver. The aura nerf to it, by the way, does not affect ancient teaching healing. So when you see all healing reduced by 5%, it's a little bit more of a raid nerf than it is a key nerf because a lot of its healing is through ancient teachings, which does not get affected by aura nerfs to Mistweaver, if you see that in the patch notes. Okay, moving on. Ellie Shami. I think this still deserves to be here. It is a Shaman, but if I was going to play a DPS Shaman, I'd play Enhance. I haven't actually seen that many Ellies since it got nerfed again, but the nerf to Ellie was a little weird, right? So the nerf to Ellie Shami, it already, in my opinion, has a few things that it suffers with. The main thing is still the 3-minute Ascendance. 3-minute Ascendance is a very tough cooldown to play around. If you have to, at any point, move during that window or do a mechanic during that window or anything, you just lose so much damage, which happens a lot in Pugs. You have to oftentimes hold it in Pugs for the big pull that may or may not be coming up, and then your tank pulls half of it, and you're like, oh no. Your single target is low. Your AoE uncapped potential on big cooldowns with procs is amazing, but it's not that needed in like a key, like a 12 or a 15. Like, this spec gets better when you can plan your route and kind of plan around it. Maybe you play 2 minutes with a PI, etc., etc. When you can plan around an Ellie Shami, it gets much better. But I really think for Pugs, the spec just will not be top damage. For like a plus 12 environment, it's just not going to be that good. Like, you're just not going to be that competitive with some of the other specs. I would bring, if I was pugging a plus 12 and I saw an Ellie Shami apply and a Fury Warrior apply, I would take the Fury Warrior. Unless for some reason I needed a Lust, I suppose, or a Shaman for any particular reason. But basically, Fury Warrior, a lot more consistent damage. 3-minute cooldown specs just don't tend to do well in lower keys when the route is not consistent. Yeah. Okay. That's Ellie Shami. Don't need to talk that more about it. Prot Pally. This is a super interesting nuanced spec. Are you ready for this one? Listen to this. This is good. It's good, but it's been nerfed every single patch notes. They have hammered this spec. Why? It didn't do anything to deserve that. They nerfed the 2-piece, they buffed the 4-piece. The 4-piece was unintentionally buffed, so they nerfed it again. But then they nerfed it by a value which was not actually reflected in the thing, because they nerfed it by 66%, but it wasn't doing 66% less damage, and then it was like still good, and then they nerfed it again, and now it's doing a little bit less damage, but still good. And it's just been a confusing mess for Lightsmith Prot Paladins. When we're talking about Prot Pally, we're talking about Lightsmith Prot Paladin, because Templar is apparently no longer a specialization for the Prot Paladins. Even with all those ups and downs, and the significant 60% nerf to the 2-piece, and all the changes to Prot Paladin, the dungeon pool is so good for them. I bring the spec to A tier. When I made this originally, we had only tested the first week. The truth is, there are so many times in this particular set of dungeons where I said to myself, I wish I was a Prot Paladin. And that's me playing a VDH or a Warrior. In some of these dungeons, I just go, I wish I was a Prot Paladin. I have thought that often. I have never thought I wish I was a Bear, and I wish I was a Blood DK, which is sad, because I like those tanks. But actually, Prot Paladin, here's why. And if you don't understand this, I will explain it to you. Each dungeon pool has a different set of challenges for tanks. There are some dungeons, with some seasons, where the auto attack damage is super high, and there are some tanks that are better at dealing with auto attack damage than others. There are some seasons where the magic tank busters are out of control. There are some tanks that are better at dealing with that than others. This season, a lot of the tank checks are application-based bleeds and magic debuffs in a variety of the dungeons. There is a tank that can deal with those better than anyone else, which is Prot Pally. because you have Dwarf, but you also have Bubble, and you also have other things that you can use, like Spell Ward, among other things. You're a high parry tank, which is important, and you got all those tools. Prot Pally is probably the best tank at some of these dungeons. It is a tiny bit squishy, but not that much more than other tanks, if played well. Its damage is the main contributing thing that holds it back. Because it was nerfed so much, at one point it was competitive, now the damage has been nerfed with all the things, so it's not as competitive, but the dungeon pool, when you look at the dungeons, trust me, you as a tank player, if you're listening to this, you're like, but Prot Pally squishy, but Prot Pally tastes dirt all the time. The thing is, you go tank Halls of Atonement for me. Come back to this list after the season, go tank Halls of Atonement as a bear, and check in with me and tell me if you would not rather be a Prot Paladin. And even as a warrior, like bring your Prot Warrior to Halls of Atonement and just say, would you rather be Prot Paladin? Yeah, you would. Okay, so that's my argument for Prot Pally. Still Prot Pally, still all the utility, but it's actually pretty decent right now. Okay? So there's the tier list being updated a little bit. We continue on. We moved Destro to A tier, which still could be B. Prot Pally's up here. Rep Pally is here. Survival Hunter still exists on A tier. This is a fair ranking for this. It hasn't changed at all. Still very solid. Might be one of the better Hunter specializations, question mark, actually. Like, really? Might be one of the better specializations, which is interesting. I've seen Survival Hunters pump. They are still a very niche spec, like Warlock, where they don't have a group buff. They have some utility that's pretty important. Again, kiting in Halls of Atonement, binding shot, a few things that you can do, right? You can soothe the cast if it goes off. You have a trank shot, etc. But, it's not going to be S tier. It's just good, yeah? Preservation Evoker. This ranking stays. I played Prez in a 14 Priory today, and I was like, this is so giga. It's so good. They buffed it a little bit. The way they buffed it is technically a minor buff, but feels really good to play. Feels great. My only problem with Prez, and I have to caveat this, it's a very hard healer to play. And realistically speaking, in most pug environments, Prez is like way down here. I'm not going to lie. Now, I'm telling you, based on output alone, if you take a healer who's equally skilled at a mid level, let's say a healer who's done every 15 on every healer. Let's put it around there, okay? Not 20s, not 10s. They're good. 15s, every level. A Prez Evoker is definitely A tier. 100% a Prez Evoker is A tier. Great damage, great utility for the season. Again, Cauterizing Flame, huge value. You've got everything that you want as a healer. Big damage, huge burst healing potential. It's actually one of the best pug healers if you play it right. There are some healers you got to understand that work by topping health bars slowly, and there are other healers that just go boop, everybody's full health. The one that goes boop, everybody's full health is actually a better pug healer, because when the damage happens unexpectedly, you go boop, everybody's full health. Another cast goes off, boop, everybody's full health. As long as you play Prez well. The issue is that no one really knows how to play Prez, and so oftentimes you don't play it well and you're hitting all the wrong buttons. It's not, I swear it happens more to preservation than any other thing, so its perception in the community is so bad, you will not get invited to keys, no one wants to play with you, everybody still harps, whenever I play it on stream, everyone always goes, oh, the range on Prez is so bad, like how do you heal the last boss of Rookery? I'm like, by moving around. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean the range is so bad? Like, it's just, there's a person over there, you just walk to that person to spell, and you just set up an echo there. Like, it's not a problem. It's really, like, it's an old school way of thinking. The range on Prez is not an issue, mostly at all. You can just echo people before you move out of range. It's really not that bad. Yet the perception still stays that it cannot heal pugs, that it has such a ramp to it, etc., etc. It's not true. Like, it's just not how it works. You have healing all the time, pretty much. So I think this is actually a really good pug specialization, okay? You gotta understand, if I rank it here, you're doing a lot of work to do, technically speaking, what other healers can do, but better. As much as I love this, and the truth is it does deserve this ranking, aside from Cauterizing Flame, which is unique to Prez, Voidweaver also does big damage and is Dispriest. You do not have a group buff. You have a group buff. You do not have PI. You have PI. You do big dam. You do big dam. You do not have shields. You have shields. You do not have Pain Sup. You have Pain Sup. So it's just kind of hard, because every healer at this point in the season just competes with the top 3 healers, which are going to be the top 3 healers forever if they don't do something about this. Yeah, okay. My cook, and I'll make a whole nother video about this at some point, is that they should just remove group buffs for M+. Keep it for raid. I understand why you need it for raid, but remove it for M+. It'd be so much better of a game. Okay, moving on. Fire Mage, down. Fire Mage is B. I actually think Fire Mage got gutted a little bit. Does not do as a very competitive damage, okay? Fire Mage is like maybe even C tier. Actually, oh, man, Fire Mages are going to hate me. I'll put this in C tier. I think that every Fire Mage I've played with, even before the nerfs, was still bad. And they just weren't doing competitive damage. Again, very high keys, can plan around it. Ignite build, cool. But the Ignite build was nerfed. They buffed Flame Strike. Flame Strike build, bad. I have not seen a single Fire Mage do competitive damage. It is a very high skill ceiling spec. If you take the best Fire Mage in the world, could they do big damn and maybe prove this wrong? Sure. But your average Fire Mage is not doing this right. There's like 10 different things to track. It's kind of hard to play. And even if played optimally, it's still tuning-wise below the other mages. I would gladly take a Frost Mage over a Fire Mage any day. I would actually put Fire Mage all the way down here. I do not think it deserves to be any higher than this. I think its damage is actually quite subpar. You have two other mage specializations which are currently doing better. So Fire Mage belongs down here. That's it. The only thing you have is Cauterize. You have Cauterize, which is a cheat death, which is nice. But ultimately, still, other mages are better. Demo Warlock. This is the first specialization that has been buffed to the extent where it is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, because it does not have a group buff. This spec is S tier. It pumps. It actually deserves it. This is a Warlock specialization that deserves its place in S tier. This is really, it just does so much damage. Like, it actually has the raw output that it should be considered S tier. There's an interesting interaction with this, which is that its damage is half magic, half fizz, which is really weird because it technically benefits from Mistweaver, benefits from Monk buff, but it also benefits from Chaos Brand. It technically benefits from both, which is a little bit strange. Not that it matters too much, but I'm just saying you would think Brewmaster can't, like, you just think that it wouldn't work like that, but it does. It benefits slightly more from Chaos Brand than it does Mystic Touch, but it's just an interesting little thing, the coding in the game. Demo Warlock is actually super fun to play. It's got a fluid playstyle. It's got damage very consistently, okay? Very, very, very consistent damage, which is nice. Not a 2-minute specialization, although it has 2-minute cooldowns with Grim or Felguard. Mostly, it is a 1-minute specialization. Pretty decent. Very, very good single target. Very good AoE. Warlock. There's not much more to say about this. It just is good. Like, you will consistently see a good Demo Warlock topping your boss meters. They will do 4 or 5 million single target. I had one today do 5 million single target on a boss without... I think he might have been bugged. I don't know what he was doing. I don't know what... I actually think he might have been bugged. I don't know. 5 million single targets, insane. This spec is very good right now. It deserves its place in S tier. Okay. Moving on from the other A tier specs. Enhancement Shaman does deserve to stay here. It is doing just fine. It's a Shaman. If you want a DPS Shaman, it's better than Ellie, so it deserves its place in A tier. Assassination, we put here earlier. Big buffs, good prio damage, etc., etc. Havoc. I'm almost tempted to put this higher. You gotta understand. There's a world where Havoc is S. I can't in good conscience put it in S right now, but it's good. It's really good. It's really, really good. It's one of the best melee specializations you can play at the moment. The main thing about Havoc is that if you don't play VDH, it's Chaos Brand. If you do play VDH, you don't play Havoc. Havoc has been outshined by the fact that VDH exists. Havoc has very good prio damage through Eldrachi, Wounded Quarry, but it also has good damage overall, like just like really good AoE, very strong single target, pretty tanky if played well. It's really good. So I just think Havoc is a strong A tier contender. If you ask me, would I rather take a Havoc? Again, they still have that problem of dying to every ground effect, which is a problem, but Havoc is very solid. Unholy is still here. Like I said, it's tuning depending on how much they actually buff it. And I played with one today who was very good. Not quite S, but very good. Resto Shaman. This is a change that I will make. Resto Shaman is S tier, not A tier. Because you don't play Totemic. When I originally tested this, I was playing Totemic. I messed up. This was not totemic. The season is not totemic. You play Farseer. Farseer is kind of awesome. It's a little bit harder to play. You kind of lose that very fluid, easy totem play style because you have to actually ramp a little bit and plan. Farseer has very good output, is a Shaman, 12-second kick, good healer. You need Shaman buff, healer, Shaman, Farseer, just not totemic. This is S tier. It has everything it needs to be S tier. It brings everything you possibly want and more out of a healer. This is the best, probably, pug healer out of anything. A good Shaman can carry your team. There are so many little things that a Shaman can do that you don't even think about the fact that it can do. The cap totem every pull, but you gotta understand, what does cap totem actually do? Like, what does it do? You're like, well, it stops a cast. Not just that, it also stops bleed application in Halls of Atonement. When I was healing Halls of Atonement of my Farseer Resto Shaman, it also stops their auto attack, which can give your tank a second to reset an application. If you notice that your tank is just parried a few bleeds, and there are 2 seconds left on his bleed stacks, and you cap totem, he now has 0 and has reset his bleeds. Congratulations, you've used your utility. If you're like, once again, you can knock up, you have all these utility. Another big thing, and again, Halls of Atonement is going to be a big deal this season if they don't nerf it. You have Earth Ellie. Again, I'm looking at my tank, I'm like, oh, he's about to die. Bleed stacks, he needs to kite. Earth Ellie, boom, done. The Earth Ellie takes him for a second, done. Like, you have options. You just don't think about this. We think about, like, most Shamans are not thinking like that. You have Spirit Link, which can save your tank. There's a lot of things. Farseer is amazing tank healing compared to some of the other healers. You dump your Ancestors into healing cert, like, you can really top a single target in your tank. So, good tank healing, good tank support, good team support, good overall healing. Can struggle a little bit with consistent HPS checks because you'll run out of cooldowns. Doesn't struggle with mana. Totemic has a mana problem. This one doesn't. Farseer has no mana problems. So overall, pretty good. Yeah, got Bloodlust, got everything you need. Pretty happy with Farseer. I just think that you got to make the swap to Farseer. If you're playing Resto Shaman, listen to me. Just try Farseer out. It's a little different. If you don't like it, you could still play Totemic. Totemic has none of the things I just talked about. Relatively poor tank healing, relatively poor mana consumption, relatively, like, you still have your utility, but I think Farseer is a better version of Shaman. It's tuned very highly right now. It's good. Okay, so those are the changes here. Now we go into the S tier. This is where things get funky, dude. This is where things start getting weird because they have really taken a look at this. I think that the realm we find ourselves in today is much better. The balance of PTR originally was that the S tier specs were doing 40% of what the D tier specs were doing, but now it's a lot closer, which is better for the game overall. Very good for the game that the balance is better because all you want, you don't need your spec to be crazy S tier. You just want it to not be soup. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I know you're really happy. You're like, oh, look, listen, man, I would love to be the super meta. I just don't want to be really bad. And that's a much better way to look at it. Right now, they've condensed the delta so that the top is not as far ahead of the bottom, which is nice. Okay. So, Marksmanship Hunter still pumps, but I bring it down to A tier. The 10% nerf to this was maybe enough. It still pumps, but is Hunter. Hunter only exists in Giga S tier if it pumps so hard that it's borderline illegal. This is the type of pumping that you don't walk away from easily. It doesn't do that anymore. The 10% was enough to bring it to just very good. Realistically, this might still top the meters, but it's not the strongest single target, doesn't really have a group of. Hunter's Mark doesn't count. Has Binding Shot, has a few things, it's pretty tanky. Overall, though, I don't think it deserves a spot in S tier after the nerfs. Cool? I might be wrong on this, but let's say that your Hunter is doing give or take the same damage as another S tier spec. You would take the other S tier spec. Hunter only exists up here if it is very good. Okay, next, Beastmaster Hunter. Same deal. Has been nerfed enough, except for one little thing. It's still that good. It's still here. It's been nerfed crazy, okay? It's been nerfed a lot. The Mystic Touch nerf affects it, yes, but also, it's just been nerfed by 10%. This talent was nerfed. The haste reduction was nerfed. This was nerfed 3% again. And it is still top damage by a few million in almost every key I do with it. This spec is a beast. I do not mind. But there is a big reason I'm putting it up here. I will leave it in S tier for one main reason, which is the way that it deals damage is the most consistent DPS in all of M+. There is no more DPS that is more consistent than this spec. It literally does not have cooldowns. It just does damage all the time. You used to play Call of the Wild, so in 2 minutes you had big cooldowns. You don't even play Call of the Wild anymore. You just walk into the pack and go, pets, brr, attack, and then you do 40 million DPS. Okay? The big AoE pulls, oftentimes just a caveat for everything. If you're watching PTR and you see somebody do like 40 mil DPS, bro, they're using the raid trinket, which might get nerfed and is also going to be very hard to find because everyone's going to want it. It changes primary stat to intellect, agility, and strength, so everyone wants it. The ritual forge trinket is like a giant on use. It's like Spy Masters, but for everyone. You're not going to have access to that. So sometimes when you see DPS, you're like, wow, they did 50 mil. It's like they probably use that trinket, and just beware of that on testing. Beastmaster, though, highly consistent. One of the best, if not the best, pug DPS. If I was doing a plus 12, and I just wanted an easy plus 12, I would take a Beastmaster Hunter. It's very hard to play them wrong. Let's just put it this way. You link me a log of a Beastmaster Hunter doing very bad DPS in a plus 12, I would be, well, listen, I've been surprised before. I wouldn't be the most shocked, but I'd be kind of shocked. This spec is really easy to play. You literally hit like 3 buttons, and you do good damn. You want a Beastmaster guide right now? Oh, you hit multi-shot, and then you hit barb shot, and then you hit kill command. Give or take any order. Congratulations. That's how you play Beastmaster Hunter. That's it. Okay, moving on. This one here. I was not a religious person until I read the last set of patch notes. And then I realized that maybe there is a god out there. Because they actually nerfed the degeneracy of Balance Druid. Hallelujah. But they left the other one untouched. So it's still fucking good. God damn it, I don't want to play with this specialization. But every time they nerf it, they just don't do enough. Here's what happened. All right, let me give you an objective analysis, okay? I'll take my own ego out of this. Balance Druid is still a good spec. All right, listen. It's still a good spec. Keeper of the Grove is dead. They nuked that out of existence. So that's nice, okay? They don't have the degenerate gameplay they did before. But Elun's Chosen still does good damage. It's still a Druid. You might still play it. It still has all these things that Druid has. But there is one thing, and I will bring this down. I will bring this down. This is not S tier anymore. It's high A tier. It's maybe the highest of the A tier. I don't think it's S tier anymore. It's still just very good. I wanted it to be down here. I was ready for this to happen. It's not quite here, though. It is actually still high A tier, okay? Without Keeper of the Grove, Elun's Chosen does good damage. It is 100% effective pad damage. You are casting Starfall and Starfire. It does a very tiny bit of... You can't even argue it's Prio. Some Balance Druid out there is going to be like, we do Prio. It's like, no, you don't. Play Arcane. Play any of the other specs that actually do Prio. You don't. You are now a pad specialization. But your damage is still relatively competitive, and you are still a Druid. If you want Solar Beam in a coordinated group, great. You still have Solar Beam, and you're the only one that has Solar Beam out of any specialization. Would you like to know what else about Balance Druid Solar Beam, though? It's not good in low keys. I don't know. So this is a weird thing that happens, by the way. You need to understand this about Balance Druid. In a plus 12, Solar Beam is a terrible button. You would rather have a melee kick. In a high key, you hear people talk about Solar Beam is so good because you coordinate it and you know when you're using it. It's not good in a lower key, okay? It's not good in a lower key. You want a regular kick. You want a regular kick with Balance Druid. This kick is actually bad. You will notice that your kicks are lacking. In lower keys, you invite a Balance Druid to your plus 12, you'd be like, man, why are casts going off, man? Why are casts going off right now? You know? And you're like, oh, we have a Balance Druid. So the main thing here is Balance Druid should be an A tier. It's still a boomy, still has all the things. But I really don't think it's a great specialization for a plus 12. Pretty straightforward to play. does fair damage, but is squishy if not played extremely well. And by extremely well, I mean press bear form, but it's a big ask for a balanced druid. If you ask a balanced druid to press bear form, it's a big ask for them, okay? They listen, they've got a lot on their plate. They're trying to press Starfall and Moonfire and Starfall and Sun. They press the Sunfire and the Star. They've got a lot on their plate, okay? So yeah, you can't you don't expect them to be all perfect, all right? They can they'll bear form when they're ready. All right, listen, that's balanced druid right there. Moving on. Beastmaster Hunter already went over. Arcane Mage. Well, listen, this spec is performing slightly below average. Let me tell you right now. As a certified Blizzard developer, this spec is performing slightly below average. I'm not a certified Blizzard developer. If I was, I would tell you this spec is not performing slightly below average. It is performing highly above average. It's still good. They nerfed it. I was excited. Then they buffed it. And I was like, wait, why? It's still S tier. The way it does damage, the prio damage, the overall, it's actually really solid, okay? It's really good, man. It's solid. It's actually fine in mid keys as well. The only thing is that as the keys get quite a bit lower, okay? Like the actual, this is the thing. As the key level gets toward 12 and 10, Arcane loses value because oftentimes things will die before you actually even get a full ramp off with Surge and Touch. So just saying, this is a less good specialization in a 12. It's also very hard to play and has like a weak aura that goes over 12 different conditionals for Arcane Barrage. So I wouldn't say this is the best Pug specialization, but it's decent. It's pretty good, okay? It still deserves a place in S tier. Now, Shadow Priest. Huge nerfs to its tier set. Huge nerfs to its tier set. Like, the value went from 200% to 60%. And other things got nerfed as well. So, Shadow Priest, I still think this spec lives or dies by its tuning. It does not actually provide that much to your key. It's got PI, it's got a priest buff, but it's not, you have a really, really bad kick. You have Vampiric Embrace, which is weirdly a niche button. So does Balanced Druid, by the way. Mind Soothe is not that critical. Like, you can get you don't really have to have Mind Soothe at any point. I think this spec is down here. I wouldn't even put it in the very highest A tier. I think it's kind of comp dependent. I think it's like solid A tier. Maybe not the lowest of A. I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually the lowest of A tier. It doesn't actually, this spec Lizard, it has to do give or take top damage for it to be considered viable for all the way up here. I mean, it does enough damage that I can't put it here. I would borderline drop this to B tier. If it wasn't, the tuning is very tight on this. I wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of all the way down here. So I think that it deserves its place in low A, but it's not S tier anymore. It has been nuked enough. If it is not doing within 200k of the top overall DPS, it should be lower than this. I have to test this a little bit more. I got to play with a few really good Shadow Priests today. They were doing good, but not that much better than my Frost Mage. And Frost Mage provides way more to the group. So realistically, let's say that, for example, Shadow Priest and Dev Evoker are the exact same damage. This should be here. The only reason this is here is if it does more damage than all these specs. So I think it does right now, based on my testing. Like, it does more damage than a Feral or a Fury. Borderline not more than Dev, but has a priest buff, and Fort is pretty nice. And the few other things that it provides, Vampiric Embrace, etc. You could argue that both of these should be swapped. I, again, given the utility of Dev, wouldn't be opposed to this. But I still think the numbers on Dev are not quite there. So we'll see. Okay, moving on. Resto Druid. I still expect that this might get nerfed. If it doesn't, it stays S+. I'm surprised they haven't taken a look at this more. The Symbiotic Blooms were this thing that they added to Wildstalker, and the tier set, you're like, oh, cool, I get a few extra. You don't get a few extra. You get like 8. You can have crazy value. The tier set carries this, though. The tier set carries it, which is scary, because if a tier set is carrying you, just like Shadow Priest before, and they decide to take a look at it, and they go, nah, we don't want the power to be tied to a tier set. They nuke it without compensation. Not so good. Not so good. Keep in mind, they also nerfed the Mage tier set and then compensated them with an aura buff. Because... Okay, wait, I'm going to go over Mages. I'm talking about Resto Druid. Resto Druid's fine right now. Druid buff, you probably want a way to bring it. If you can bring a Druid buff, it's worth a lot. It's got good Poison Dispel. It's got a lot of the things you want out of a healer this season, but mostly it just has infinite HPS. It doesn't have a lot of absorb value. It doesn't have a lot of good, really good stuff. It's just good. I think that is just HPS. This is just does infinite. If you play this, you're like, wow, I can do. It feels like you can do 10 million HPS. It's wild. Okay, Disc Priest got nerfed today. Hit pretty hard. Still here. Frost DK. Frost DK got hit by 12%. It also got changed a little bit other things. 0.8 instead of 1 second on the extension. Still here. 12% was not enough. This spec is actually so far ahead that 12% drops it to a clearer delta. Clearer delta. This is a clear delta. Also, I'm going to go back to Disc Priest for a second. Listen to me. Disc Priest, you have Oracle, which is still very good. Yes, it got nerfed, but it's still very good. You also have Void Weaver, which does insane damage, probably the highest healer damage aside from Pres Evoker, but you also have PI, so it's higher than that. You have a lot of options. This season, as long as it can keep up on HPS, Disc Priest will still be Disc Priest. The only exception to why Disc Priest drops below this is if it is not able to keep up HPS, which there's a lot of HPS checks. Okay, Frost DK. Good spec. Great. Has everything you want out of a DPS. Pretty consistent damage. Good single target. Good AoE, DK, etc. Still stays here. The nerfs were not enough. If they nerf this by another 5 or 10%, it goes down to A tier. If they don't nerf it by another 5 or 10%, this is one of the best melee specializations of the game. Great. Brewmaster. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. I don't think Brew is an S+. After testing it some more myself, and also seeing how this is going to actually play out, I don't think this is S+. I think it's high A. Actually. Here's why. When you watch PTR, you tend to watch the absolute best players play this spec, right? You actually watch the best players play it. Brew is very complicated. Is it sturdy? Yes. Does it do good damage? Yes. Is it a decent specialization for every which way for tanking? Yes. Would I rather be a Brew than a Bear this season? Probably. But it is not... It feels squishy to me. If it feels squishy to me, I'm assuming it'll feel squishy to quite a bit of people. Okay? I don't think it's actually sturdy enough to really be pushing stuff. Now, hear me out. You gotta understand, you're like, wait a second, no, Awoo, you're wrong. This season it was sturdy enough, and it's only getting sturdier next season. Take a step down. Let me ask you a question, okay? Think about this for a second. Your weekly 15s this season, how did your Brewmaster feel? You're a healer. I want all healers to chime in right now, okay? You're playing with a Brewmaster. Do they feel tanky to you in your weekly 15 key? Because the answer is no. There's not a single person that will be like, you know what I love playing with in my weekly 15? A Brewmaster. They're so tanky. If played extremely well with coordination from your group, they're very tanky. But it's so tough because most of the time they don't play to perfection. And I think the hype around it was just like, it hasn't been a Brew meta for so long. Everybody's so hyped for it. They want to play something different on PTR. So Brew was like really hyped up, and it still is being hyped up. But I swear the most healers at most key levels are going to be like, Brew is one of the squishiest tanks. I think that a lot of people think that. I think if you're pugging, Brew is not the best tank to play with. The PTR notes has only gotten buffed, to be fair. Master of Harmony got buffed. Shadowpan. Like, everything has actually been relatively good for Brew. It's not gotten any negative notes. I just think the dungeon pool, like, is it good for it? Technically, yes, but I don't want to heal a Brew in Halls of Atonement the first week. I don't want to do it, man. I genuinely, I would not take a Brew to my Halls of Atonement unless I trust them. If they're very good, sure, but you gotta be gaming on Brew, and I think that this doesn't deserve S tier. Speaking of the next two tanks, you're not gonna like this. Are you ready? You're not gonna like this. I think Prot Warrior after the nerfs is the bottom of S tier. I think it's the bottom of S tier. I think it's still above A tier. I would put it at the top of A, but I still think it's the bottom of S. The nerfs were fine. But guess what they buffed when they nerfed it? They buffed Mountain Thane. Mountain Thane is very interesting. Mountain Thane gives Prot Warrior a little bit of a niche. You want to know what the niche is? Mountain Thane is super easy to play. Demolish, Colossus Warrior, has some nuance to it. Mountain Thane, you Thunderblast. Mountain Thane is very reminiscent of a Guardian Druid playstyle. It's very basic. It's very straightforward. It does good damage. Weirdly enough, Mountain Thane is actually a bit squishier this season for two main reasons. Number one is you don't have the crazy self-sustain from Fueled by Violence. And number two, you do not play Unstoppable Force. You play the other talent because you want more Thunderclaps. So, in general, right, I think that Mountain Thane, I still think you're going to want Colossus in some dungeons, but you might be able to play Mountain Thane in some other ones. I think that there's a lot of tank players who would really enjoy the playstyle of Mountain Thane. Colossus has min-max. Mountain Thane doesn't. You just zug-zug. You literally walk in, you do the basic tank things, which is don't get hit in the back, face the mobs, use your mitigation. You just thunderclap. It's very straightforward. It's very simple. I like the fact that it is so simple. I think there should be specs in the game that are straightforward and easy to pick up. I think it's a great specialization for a pug. The main issue with Warrior still in most pugs is depending on the key level. There are some tanks that haven't quite learned how to gather and haven't quite learned how to not get hit in the back as they are tanking. A Warrior will still get pretty much one-tapped. They will just go and they will vanish out of existence. Like really, really fast. They will just be like, I'm not here anymore. Play Cheat Death, please. If you're playing the Warrior, please play Battlescarred Veteran. It'll save your life like 3 times in a key if you're still learning Warrior. And even if you're a good Warrior, still play it. You never know when you just accidentally have a weird charge, get hit in the back. You don't want to vanish out of existence. Okay, so play Battlescarred Veteran. Mountain Thane, decent. Colossus, still good. There are a few spots where Warrior struggles. You will probably need to be a Dwarf Warrior. I hate to break this to you, but for tanks this season, race changes are probably mandatory if you want to push. Can you make it work? Yeah. Last season, it was you had to be Night Elf. Not anymore. This season, you probably have to be Dwarf. There are just a few things, specifically Halls of Atonement, that you probably cannot live or deal with properly without being a Dwarf. Again, those bleed pulls are intermittent, which means you do not need to have it every time. You just need to have it intermittent. Like every 2 minutes, you need a bleed dispel. Having one is massive for that dungeon. So Prot Warrior, still looking pretty good. There are one fundamental flaw with Prot Warrior is a lot of these tanks that might be, like, Prot Warrior is good. Please let them gather. Please let them gather. Do not make them use their AoE taunt, which is now an AoE silent, to aggro mobs. It's annoying. You want to save that for when you actually want to interrupt a whole set of casts. That might be important. Just let your Warrior tank aggro. Just give them a second. Give them a second, please. Just let them walk into a pack and get dots rolling. Just don't zug-zug when you're playing. Just give me... I'm going to talk about that later. I'll make a whole video about it. Okay. So that leaves this tank, which is the best tank this season. Pretty much by far. Are you happy about that? I don't think I'm so happy about that. This is untouched. They... Actually, you know, every other tank has been nerfed more than this tank. This VDH is the best tank right now. They haven't touched it. My still thought process is that they're going to tune it soon. They were willing to touch Prot Warrior. This is the only spec in the game that is literally blind. How have they not been touched? It doesn't make sense. It's like the old game of peekaboo, where if I can't see you, you can't see me. They're probably gonna get nerfed. I have a feeling. This is my official tier list video. I will bet you right now, if they do not nerf this spec to any further than they already have, if they do not nerf this, listen to me. There's a new Demon Hunter spec coming out. And they want you to already be playing it. That's got to be it. It has to be it. That has to be it. If they don't nerf this at all, it's because they actually must. There must be a Demon Hunter spec coming out. Like I thought that was capped for a long time, and I was like, "There's no way." But how could they not touch this? I mean, it's literally the most dominant tank in the last 2 years of M+. I feel like the community would borderline riot if they didn't nerf this, because I'm telling you right now, this is the best tank. I refused to play it this last season. I regret that because I started gearing mine in preparation just in case it doesn't get nerfed. And I was like, wow, this is so good. This is so easy. I went on the PTR and I was like, fine, I'll play my 6th tank. I was playing every other tank. And I was like, fine, I'll play my Demon Hunter. And I was like, why is this so easy? Why am I not struggling? Why am I able to do all this? It's so good. It's not even that hard to play. So Demon Hunter is still Demon Hunter. I expect them to nerf it. That is my tier list. This is give or take the updates. There are a few things I'd be curious to test more about. In terms of exact numbers between A and B tier, I'm really curious. In terms of whether Furious Arms is actually better, I want to see more. But otherwise, I'm pretty confident in this list. I want to make a separate caveat for a little bit of tanks and healers. Their healers are one of the only thing where I genuinely feel like you have 3 healers that you play and that's it. Like, I really feel like right now they've locked themselves into a very, very strict corner with healing, and it's an unfortunate reality of M+. Because of how group buffs work and utility works and keys, you have Resto Shaman, Disc Priest, and Resto Druid. Those are the 3 best healers, always. Unless they giga buff one of the other ones. Like Mistweaver, Holy Paladin, and Prez, and Holy Priest have to be doing so much more to beat that. Like, you would have to be doing nearly twice the damage and 1.5 times the healing. Like, you would just have to be so overtuned to compete with that. And they are actually doing a fairly good job with tuning now. So I don't think that's going to happen. It's kind of similar to tanks, where Blood DK and Bear are just sort of shafted by they have to be doing a lot to compete, because all these other things, they bring so much. Like, you can argue, you can be like, no, I mean, look, Holy Priest isn't that bad. You walk into a pull, you have what? You have what? GS, Psychic Scream? You're like, I can do some damage and healing. What if you just swapped and you were like, look, I'll try Resto Shaman for a season. You walk into a pull, you're like, oh my god, I have a 12-second kick, a Cap Totem, a Thunderstorm, an Earth Ellie, a this, and a Dispel, and a this, and oh my. It's so good. You walk into a pull as a you have so much more. The delta between healing right now is in particular that bad. Right now, in particular, the delta of healers is a really big concern for me, because you will rotate always the top 3 healers. And that is something I think they need to look at or address. A big part of that is group buffs. If healers didn't have group buffs, the healing would go like a lot better. So that is my take about healing. My take about tanking is that tanks are actually relatively well balanced. The reason that Blood DK and Bear are all the way down here are not because they're bad. They're actually really good. All tanks can live. This is so important because I will rank them accordingly. All tanks can live. You will not have a problem. If you're a good Blood DK, you will live all your weekly keys and you'll do great. And you'll be like, I don't know why everybody was ranking Blood DK so poorly. Why did they rank me so bad? I did 4 million overall. I did good damage. I lived. I didn't really need any healing. I did great. Okay. Same thing as what I just mentioned about healing. You walk into a pull as a Blood DK, you have a kick, you have Death Grips. But that one gambit that you did, you failed. And the reason is the pack at the end, you were like, 2 unstable rifts are going off. I can kick one and I already used my Death Grips, or I missed the other one. Okay. I give you Prot Warrior, and you did 4 million overall. I give you Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior goes in, you don't have to fight for your life at all. You are literally clicking 3 buttons, and you do more DPS. You also have a group buff, which gives Battle Shout. That same pull that you died on as a DK, you press 1 button. Everything is silenced for 6 seconds. You can't compete with the utilities. Guardian Druid feels exactly the same way. I'm like, great, I'm playing Guardian Druid super well. Same instance. I can bring it to... I soloed the first pull on 15 Gambit. I made a guide. I made a Guardian Druid guide, and I went and I soloed on plus 15. I just went and I was like, look, Guardian Druid can live this. No problem. And then just to test it, I was like, out of curiosity, I had to game it though. I was like working really hard. I was like, and I'm going to press my friend, this perfect timing here and this and that. And then I went in, I did it on Prot Warrior, and I was like, there is no way this is comparable. Because I did it on Prot Warrior, and I was like, I can ride my bike with no handlebar. I was like, I was to close my eyes, and I was like, I can still... I'm getting bored. I'm just immortal. Like, I can't die. And I was like, what? There's such a delta between that. And like, so first of all, it doesn't even have its niche anymore. Prot Warrior was just tankier in that particular pull. And also Prot Warrior has a mass silence. The mass silence is like one of the biggest things. I don't think you understand how important that is in some pulls. You're like, everybody's about to die. Press this button. And it's just really solid to have those options as a tank or a healer. As a DPS player, your damage matters. As a tanker and a healer, you do 4 million overall on a Blood DK, you do 3.5 on a Bear. Well, at least I got Mark of the Wild, but Warrior is doing 4.5. That's a straight up, what, like 15% delta? And they're the same tankiness, and this one has more utility. Why wouldn't you play this? You do Halls of Atonement on this tank? Why wouldn't you play this? Just try it. Just try it. Go on PTR. You have a max level character, go on PTR and test it. Try it. Watch it happen. You play this for a second, you're like, I didn't even take any of the bleeds. I could just stand in the pack. And then I was like, I need to run. I just press a button, and I'm out of the pack. This one, I have to be Vortex, Typhoon, I have to game it. My Vortex is on cooldown? Oh, no, I'm dead. This one, I leap. This one, I bubble. This one, I do... You have options. This one can't even dwarf. So the dungeon pool and what you need out of a tank or a healer has changed so much over time that the problem is that there are some tanks and healers which are quote-unquote not viable. But this is in a coordinated environment and what you're going to have the easiest time with. I'm giving you things to understand about this is going to make it easier. But the Blood DK will still live and the Bear will still live. And you will not have a problem if you want to play these tanks. It is not the same as DPS. DPS feel miserable when you're playing a Fury Warrior and you're doing 3 million DPS less than an S tier spec because you're target capped and you're tuned poorly. That feels really bad. But as a tank player, doing 3.5 mil versus 4.5 mil, is that a big damage? Yes. But do you still feel bad about it? Not really, because you still tanked the dungeon, right? You didn't die. You were tanky tank. You still did well. Correct. So tanking has less of a delta than DPS. If you want to play one of the worst tanks, you can still play it. It's no problem. Healing doesn't feel like that because healing you will let people die. That feels bad. Tanking is the one role where it's like, look, if you want to play one of the C tier tanks for 15, like, that's totally fine. If you're good at it, you'll be way better at a Blood DK or a Bear than you will of a Prot Pally or a VDH. A bad VDH goes in and dies immediately. They don't even make it to the pole. They leap, dead. A bad Brewmaster can't sustain themselves. A bad Prot Pally forgets to bubble and dies anyways, even though he has the button. A good Bear is like, great, I don't have Dwarf, I don't have Bubble, but at least I can Vortex, Stampeding Roar, and run. It's like, okay, but so it's all about how you game as a tank. There are differences in the roles. You can't apply that logic to other things. And that's an important caveat when you think about this list. I will put them here because they should be here. But for what it's worth, that is how to understand the specs in M+. Okay? Does that make sense? Great. Now, in terms of going over meta comps, I want to wait just a little bit because I want to see some of the synergies and I want to see a little bit more of PTR testing. But I do have a section of my Discord where people have been suggesting meta comps. I found some interesting ones. I kind of am curious to know what people think is going to be the meta comp because I still see two. I still see two primary meta comps, if not three, in my head right now. I'm like, oh, these three, all of them work. And there's a few options, like healing in particular. It's like, do you play Restlo Druid or Restlo Shaman to fill buffs? I guess that depends. Do you play Enhancement or do you play Boomy? It's like, interesting. There's like a few things that make comps very interesting, and I love that stuff. So if for any reason you want to post your meta comp prediction, send it to me in the Discord. But that's it. Those are my closing thoughts. I will continue to test a lot more. Keep in mind, I will be gone for a whole week. So this is my update for a whole week. I will be unfortunately traveling to a different country where I will find a PC cafe to pass the time to play World of Warcraft, but I will not be streaming because I won't have my streaming set up. I will still be a degenerate and just play World of Warcraft all day. I'll just do it off stream. because what else would I do with my life? I'm chronically addicted to this game. Okay, there we go. We still have a bunch of weeks tuning. This might change. That is my tier list. Thank you for watching. I think I went a little bit long, as I do.